Well, thanks everybody for your patience. We're going to get going here again. We have Bob Dunlap coming up next to present this year's Volcker Awards.
Hi, if you don't know, the Velcro Awards are for significant contributions to Minnesota ornithology within the past year. So we're looking at January until now for this. As chair of the Minnesota Ornithologists Union Records Committee, along with my committee members, I'm charged with maintaining the official list of birds that have occurred in Minnesota. At present, that list stands at 453 species. Adding a new species to the list involves close examination of the valuable evidence provided by the observers of the bird in question. As I'm sure you all know, not all decisions to add or omit a species from the state list are as straightforward as we want them to be. Arguably, among the most controversial decisions was adding pygmy nuthatch to the state list in 1996. Some of you in this room may have gone up to the Fargo-Moorhead area to see this bird, but for others the story is probably new. To give you the full narrative would take longer than the time I have to present this award, so instead I thought the best way to provide a summary was to give it to you in the form of a limerick. A pygmy nuthatch appeared in North Dakota, but listers cared more than one iota. A tape was played, the nuthatch obeyed, and flew across the river to Minnesota. So, as you can imagine, not everyone was happy with this bird's provenance, and you can read all articles in the Loon arguing whether to add this bird to the list. Ultimately, the decision was made to add the pygmy nuthatch to the list of Minnesota's birds, albeit with the subscript of origin uncertain. And it remained the single record of this species in our state until earlier this year, when our first Velcro Award recipient discovered one in St. Paul's Como Park, just under 2 miles east of where we sit today as the nuthatch flies. On the morning of March 8, while birding in Como Park, our first Velcro recipient encountered a small active bird among the pines that she quickly identified as a pygmy nuthatch. Our recipient's sharp field skills and prompt reporting of the discovery allowed birders across the state to observe this western species, presented by only a small handful of records east of the Great Plains. The bird remained in the area through March 15th, providing valuable documentation and enjoyment to many. So thus, we now have a second state record, pygmy nuthatch in Minnesota, one that unambiguously arrived here of its own accord, and thanks to the efforts of our recipient, we can finally remove that horrible origin uncertain subscript from the nuthatch species account on our state list. So please join me in congratulating Anya Auerbach, our first recipient of the 2025 Brother Theodore Velcro Award for Special Achievement in Field Ornithology. Unfortunately, she had to leave about an hour ago, so she's not here to accept the award. But we have a second Velcro Award in 2025, and this also involves another controversy. Up until 2004, the bird species discovered by our recipient, or rather our recipients, was on the official list for Minnesota, but it was removed from the list that year after renewed scrutiny suggested the identification, made over half a century prior in 1952, didn't stand up to modern-day standards. Unfortunately, that record was based on a written description, whereas most birds on the state list were represented by a physical specimen or diagnostic photographs. As you can probably imagine, not everyone was happy with revisiting historical data, and similar to the nuthatch, there were people arguing on both sides whether Black Phoebe should have remained on the state list. 21 years later, although that decision remains contentious, what is no longer up for debate is that Black Phoebe does indeed belong on Minnesota's official state list. On an unseasonably warm afternoon along the north shore of Lake Superior on October 25, our recipients found themselves at Gooseberry Falls State Park, northeast of Two Harbors. Along with many other birders that day, they were headed toward Grand Marais as part of the annual Croissant Jaunt, which has become a North Shore birding tradition mirroring the Muffin Run that began some 4 decades ago. Interestingly enough, Gooseberry Falls tends not to be a spot frequented by birders on the last weekend in October, but for some reason our recipients decided to scan the shore from one of the park's picnic areas. Upon arrival, what at first glance looked like another dark-eyed junco flew up and perched upright in front of them and began pumping its tail. Knowing that this was indeed no junco, but one of the recipients stayed on the bird while another frantically ran to grab their camera, and the third hastily typed the alert into the Discord group that they had just found a Black Phoebe. What ensued over the next few hours is best described by one of our recipients in the comments in the shared eBird checklist. As crazy fun as the sighting was, what I'm never going to forget is how quickly everyone mobilized and worked together to ensure everyone got eyes on the bird. People going up to the parking lot to guide others down to the beach, people sharing and keying in with scopes and describing in detail, and following the bird as it moved up the slope. Birding is so many things, and the love and care and learning we share with each other is, to me, one of the most important parts of the equation. To the croissant jaunt crew and everyone who helped each other find this bird today, thank you. The black phoebe had no intentions of remaining a one-day wonder, however, and scores of birders were able to view the bird hunting insects along the same south-facing slope adjacent to Lake Superior through at least November 17th. I was fortunate enough to see the bird myself, as well as the mob of birders, not long after the initial discovery on October 25th, and it really was a sublime experience. Now, I've already given you a limerick today, but I'd like to provide another short poem to add my own take on what transpired, this time in the form of a haiku. Yep, count them, get ready. Wayward black phoebe, sunlit on a warm cliff face, pleasing crowds below. So please join me in congratulating the 3 recipients of our second Brother Theodore Velker Award of 2025, Ben Stubbs, Neil Skook, and Megan Hines.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bob. Congratulations. And as always, our last award of the day is the Lifetime Achievement Award, and is being presented today by Leanne Landstrom with some help from a friend.
Hello, everyone. I'm Leanne Landstrom, the retired director of Eastman Nature Center in Elm Creek Park Reserve with the Three Rivers Park District. And I am pleased to be here today to present this year's Lifetime Achievement Award. For many years while I was working at Eastman, this year's recipient and his banding crew showed up every other month on a Saturday morning to do bird banding demonstrations for the public. After I retired in 2015, I was able to join the banding crew of 6 people. This person was most interested in the educational aspects of bird banding and made sure that the participants got good looks, took close-up photos, and even helped release the birds. Of course, he explained why birding is done and told stories of the individual birds that we recaptured. He used his own equipment and spent time clearing vegetation from the net lanes before each program. This person started birding with the Three Rivers Park District in 1982, primarily as a bird bander with the public programs, but he also served as a natural resources surveyor, helping the district's wildlife division, that is Elm Creek nesting raptor surveys, breeding bird atlas work, and spring songbird surveys. But he isn't just into birds. He did help with landing turtle surveys and invasive species control. All in all, he volunteered 2,061 hours to date for the Park District. But the person retired from bird banding in May 2023. He thought 40 years was enough.
Hi, I'm Siah St. Clair. I'm the retired director of Springbrook Nature Center and currently the chair of the Red-Headed Woodpecker Recovery Project. I'm going to skip through some of this, so I'm going to read as quickly as I can. This person also did double duty as lead bander at Springbrook Nature Center in Fridley. A tornado devastated the Nature Center in July of 1986 while volunteering in cleanup. He had the idea and approached me when I was still the director that this would be a perfect opportunity to do a long-term bird banding study to compare bird usage of the damaged and undamaged parts of the park and to uncover any population changes. He approached me in 1987. We purchased equipment and recruited banding assistants. Banding started in 1988 and continued for 35 years until he retired in 2023. We ended up banding 15,000 individual birds of 111 different species. Over 10,000 public visitors attended these sessions. This person and his crew of 48 volunteers over the years banded once or twice a month for 35 years. There were about 550 banding sessions and 65,000 volunteer hours. Springbrook's official volunteer hour tallies for this person are unclear, but I estimate that he personally put in over 5,000 hours of bird banding work at Springbrook. That's not all. This person was also involved, or is also involved, in the red-headed woodpecker recovery project, where we're doing some activities at Cedar Creek and Ecosystem Science Reserve. He assisted with mist netting and color banding red-headed woodpeckers at Cedar Creek, and in addition, a roost study of red-headed woodpeckers was started in 2023, where we needed very dedicated volunteers who would bushwhack through defined areas and find and watch active red-headed woodpecker nests. This was done for 3 hours each week, 12 to 16 weeks each summer. This person has done this select assignment for 3 years now, doing approximately 50 visits, 4 hours at a time. So he found and observed over 20 active red-headed woodpecker nests in these last 3 years. Back to Leanne.
In his career, this person was a wildlife biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for our region. He served as an endangered species specialist for most of the time, dealing with gray wolves in their interesting, that is controversial, public delisting times in the 1970s and 80s, and he would be the person who'd have to go to the public hearings. So you know how those went. Because of his professional employment, this person was one of the very few people who was authorized to handle and ban the highly endangered Kirkland warblers in Michigan when those conservation efforts were starting up. He continued to volunteer with the Kirkland's project in Wisconsin and did color banding for their research studies for some years. He did have one last brush with fame. While at Springbrook, this person captured and banded an after-hatch year Baltimore Oriole. Many years later, the person is informed by the National Bird Banding Lab that someone in the Twin Cities had cleaned out a peregrine falcon nest box and found just the leg of a bird with a band on it. They were able to trace it back. It was the Baltimore Oriole that had been banded. 12 or more years old was this bird, a new North American age record. To recognize the thousands of hours that our friend has volunteered to collect bird banding data, do surveys, and educate thousands of people about the wonder of birds, Saya and I are pleased to congratulate our friend Ron Refsnyder. Come on up, Ron.
Thank you.